and I'm very interested in that. I love to hear people's stories of awake. That's why I watched your 5-MeO DMT video. It's like the first or second video you did, right? Back at the very beginning of your channel.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I was fascinated to hear that, as well as the sort of, it was a tremendous experience, but then also something of a crisis afterwards, it seems, too, or a lot of adjustments to be done.
Yeah, for a while. I think I think it only recently kind of stabilized for me.
Yeah.
It was just too much. Like, I don't know where to put this or how to integrate this or what do I do with this kind of thing. Yeah. So it's coming
Well,
back.
how did you put it back together again? What did you find, or did you put it back together again?
Yeah, I don't know if I did anything or if it just kind of works itself out. I think, I just think like with psychedelics, there's not. I think we're gonna find as we go deeper and deeper into this and learn more and more that there needs to be a better way of integrating these kind of things and just these kind of experiences. So there was like stages of it, and probably one stage that kind of helped was Daniel Ingram's book, like running across the Mastering and Core Teachings of the Buddha, and just like looking at his the map of insights and all of that, and just now that I look back on it, it's kind of less helpful. But I think at that point it kind of grounded me, oriented me, and like the whole Dark Knight part thing. I'm like, all right, this makes sense. Like I had this like AMP experience. That's what he calls it. Like that's how I mapped it at the time. And then I just slowly was starting to piece it back together. Like, okay, this is what happened to me. And like, I think a big part of it was just learning. I don't know. It's just like, to me, it's like, that's the taste of the ultimate. That's the taste of the ultimate. That's a complete non-dual experience, complete ego dissolving experience, oneness with everything. And then you come into relative reality where there's this sense of separation. And like the big insight for me, I did this 3 times, and the big insight was coming out of it was like, oh, the ego is an illusion, and this whole sense of, similar to what you said, like the achieving, like having to achieve, or like having to step on other people's toes, having to pull people off the ladder to get somewhere. Somehow that was very illusory, and it was just like an appearance. Like it appears like this is what we need to do. And the message that it kind of gave me was like, oh, there's all you need to do is just love. You need to live in love and fully embody love. Like at the end of the day, that's all it's really about. And coming out of the experience, for me, all 3 times, it was kind of a crying and a laughing at the same time. The crying was, there's tears of joy, but there's also some kind of grief of like, oh my God, why are we living like this? Or why have I been living like this, kind of stuck in this illusion? And then there's the relief of like, oh, it's so simple. It's so simple. It's just about love. But then when you come out, you come out of it and you get this, at that moment, maybe I thought I was enlightened or whatever. I got it. I got, this whole thing of life. I got the answer. And then you come back and like, oh, I don't still got the answer, because I still have the reactivity. I still have the relative things that I have to deal with. And I don't know how to live from that place of love, to live from that place of non-reactivity and that place of non-separation. I don't know how to do that. And I think I just been learning how to more skillfully integrate that and just become more embodied and more not trying to, oh, I need to get away from relative reality. I need to get away from this illusion. I need to, get away from samsara. I need to get back to that place. And kind of saying, no, this is it right now. I'm here now. How can I live within the framing of the ego and within this interface? And see that, there's something illusory there, and not be so identified with it, but also still be able to participate in this human experience. And I think it's just been a learning experience for me, just gradually unpacking. But definitely, I think for like the first 3 years, it was just a lot of ups and downs. I'm like, I don't know how to relate to other people. I don't know where to put this. I don't know what I do. So that's how it kind of was for me.
Yeah. At that time, I mentioned it to a couple of my teachers and 1 or 2 friends who were, if you want, in a position to comment on it, you could say. And then I had the strong sense of just forgetting it. And so after 2-3 years, I mentioned it to a couple of teachers. And then so I didn't talk about this at all at the time, really. And then uh, and then I mentioned it to a couple of teachers and a couple of friends, and then that happened in the course of a span of months, and then I just stopped thinking about it and stopped talking about it. I just dropped it, let it go. And I remember going into a winter thinking, that's it. This, I'm not going to. This is not going to become a story. Like then sometimes there's like the come to Jesus story, or sometimes the non-dual teachers. They've always got to have their epiphany moment that they constantly mine for clout and so on. I thought, it just seems so silly. So I just dropped it and didn't talk about it for a long time. And then only later, much later on now, I occasionally will mention it in a context like this because it's an interesting story, I suppose. But I would describe it in a sense as a recontextualizing of the sense of self. It was a recontextualizing of the sense of self. That was how I described it at the time. Or when I mentioned it to a couple of my teachers 2 or 3 years later, I described it as a recontextualizing of the sense of self. So it's the self is still there. I'm still here. Evidently, here I am. But the context is rather different. It's a sort of figure ground reversal. And, I think that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying too. Everything's the same but different. And how you have to do all the same things but differently, including experience oneself and be oneself actually. But there's such a different context that everything is requires an acclimatization. Yeah. Yeah. An acclimatization, I think, I prefer to integration, because acclimatization, integration has the sense of putting things back together again. And I'm not entirely sure that's necessarily possible or even desirable, maybe. But acclimatization, just getting used to it, learning to operate in the ambiguity of it seems to be something that is, as you say, kind of inevitable, right? Just time. I think time takes care of that. Yeah, time and practice. Meditation helps a great deal.
Yeah, I think that also helped me with a lot of the psychedelic experiences, like that just helped integrate them, and I think it also made them more powerful. In particular, the 5-MeO. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of what you're saying just that maps back. Like when I had the Toad experience, like I couldn't stop talking about it for years, probably for like 2 years. That was my go-to story. Anybody I met, that I'm going right at that. And then after a while, it just burned itself out. And, I saw it was like, that's a story. Somehow it became like a spiritual materialism. Even though the story was, and still it's the most profound experiences that I've had. And still, like I said, it's a story I'll still share and speak about. But there stopped being this compulsion and this, I got to keep coming back to it. And I think that's part of like it, that kind of, I stopped thinking about it so much, stopped talking about it so much. And it was like, that was just an experience. Even though there was something that seemed to illuminate and shift. It's something about it. It was something about it was very significant, but then something about it was very ordinary. Like it was just another experience.
Yeah, exactly. I got to the point where I mentioned it, like I said, 2 or 3 years later, I said it to a couple of friends and a couple of, 2 friends and 2 teachers. And, because I just wanted to run it by some people that they were my teachers in that area of meditation and so on. And I just wanted to, just run it by them so I could drop it. It wasn't that I was talking about it a lot, because I didn't talk about it a lot. But nonetheless, it's like, should I be doing something? Is there something that I should do, or with this, or is there some kind of thing I should do now, or can I just drop it, and just move on with my life, and that's why I needed to run it by them, and it was wonderful actually to do that. And one of those people was Shinzen Young, actually. Yeah, and so I told him and another one of my teachers, Godfrey Devereaux, about it, and two of my close friends who were well informed about such things, and they gave me whatever feedback they gave me. it was kind of a really, okay, great. Now I just move on.
They gave you permission to drop it?
No, they didn't give me permission to do anything. But I felt that any obligation I might have to myself or to to that experience or anything like that was relieved at that point, because you don't want to throw away significant and special things. But on the other hand, as you point out, there's this strange sense in which it's significant and special on the one hand, but on the other hand, quite normal and quite ordinary, especially when, in my case, I didn't do anything. It wasn't like I was meditating high in the Himalayas and then suddenly something happened. It wasn't like that. Like so many of my guests, meditate and do great spiritual seeking, and then they reach a goal that they've been seeking to attain. I wasn't seeking to attain anything. I just happened to, void massive amounts of blood and almost die. So, it wasn't in that context of, and the same with, you, Twin. It seems you didn't really know what you were getting into from, at least that's what it said in I got the sense from your video, you didn't really know what you're getting into. And so now you got into it. So, one doesn't want to be careless with life. But on the other hand, I think you expressed it very well, actually. It's so ordinary as well. And there's something wonderfully liberating, actually, in just letting it go. Letting it go doesn't mean going back to the way it was. Doesn't mean that. It just means don't fixate one's identity on it. Don't make it an essential biographical point that one always relates from constantly. Because then all you've done is changed one fixed position for another fixed position. You've gone from one prison cell to another prison cell, except this new prison cell has prayer flags and incense.